but Mark Ponton from Rappahannock and Sarah Marshall from Dominion will help answer questions. So let me go
Right up here, Gary.
up here
Yes, sir.
through a presentation fairly quickly to give you a quick status update on our project. The map has a lot more color. That's the first thing hopefully you'll notice, and that's good. So the blue areas are in service. The western part of the county that has blue areas, that's the Central Virginia Electric area, and that's all complete. We've got most everyone connected who wants to be connected, except for a few stragglers who are deciding as we go, but most of that is complete. The Rappahannock Shannon Hill area, we've got over 300 folks connected there. We only went past 520 homes, so that's 60%, and we're still connecting because we still have a few more to finish that out. And then more recently in Mount Hope, down the right, the kind of southeast corner of the county, we have started connecting in Paynes Mill Circuit and Locust Creek Circuit out of Mount Hope. The last couple of weeks, we've increased the number of crews we have, and we've put in about 60 or 70 new services a week just in these areas. We're still adding more crews in, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but those areas are being connected. The green areas in Mount Hope, Tip Top and Copperline, all of the fiber construction is done. So the fiber's in place, but we're doing the last splicing. So we're about 2/3 of the way through on Copperline, and we're about 20% finished on Tip Top. To finish that splicing will take us probably between 4 and 8 weeks. The Copperline circuit is a really large circuit. It doesn't show necessarily the surface area here geographically, but there's a lot more lines, both overhead and underground, so there's more splices. And we're also going to be passing more homes. So that's taken us a little while to wrap up. The green in the upper right is the Bumpus substation area. And I'm sorry, Buckner's substation area. It includes a Bumpus circuit, which is where we have crews actively working, putting fiber up in all of these areas. The most attention is going to Bumpus first, that area that's kind of the eastern side of that substation. But we're working all of those areas presently, building fiber. We haven't started splicing yet because we build the fiber first and then go in. Over on the western side, the green areas are the areas where we will be taking a handoff from Dominion and their middle mile system. This is just an update on our construction. If you have questions about Dominions, I'll leave it up to Dominion to address that. But we have started releasing work to the contractors. We will be putting in a lot of underground conduit and fiber in these areas marked Rise 1 and Rise 2. They're the green colored areas in the western part of the county. So that has been released for work, and you'll see underground crews along the VDOT right-of-way building in all of those areas and building back to the Dominion facilities where we'll put light in at one point and take light out. So we have a lot of activity going on. The other orange-ish areas, we have make-ready crews. We also have some underground crews that put in conduit at the same time we do electric make-ready work on the overhead lines. So we're working in the Ellisville area, particularly up around the lake, in several parts of the Ellisville substation. And in Cuckoo, we're doing the final field work for make-ready engineering. So there should be trucks of different types, pickups, line trucks, underground trucks, fiber splicers, people all over the county right now. And then real quickly, here's some numbers. With CVEC, we had 4,100 total passings in the county. 2,460 people are connected on CVEC lines. Again, we get a few per week that add on to that, but we get just about everybody connected who wants to be connected other than the ones who come on. Shannon Hill, we had 520 passings and over 300 connections. The Mount Hope hut, you can see this is one substation from Rappahannock. We'll have 4,018 passings, almost as much as the entire CVC area in the county. That is, we've got 2 circuits we're connecting in now. We've got 2 more that we will be connecting in soon as we finish the splicing. We already have over 2,400 people who've signed up for service just out of Mount Hope. So again, we're getting about 60 or 70 a week now. We'll be increasing that. We're going to try to get up to 100 or 120 a week just in Louisa County. We're doing about double that system-wide, but about half the work we're doing right now is just in Louisa County. One of the reasons that there's a limit on how fast you can go with some of this is the amount of underground markings it takes to do this type of construction in one area. And you can overload the contractors for the 811 missed utility system. If you call in too many and they can't get things marked, then your crews can't get out there and work. Rappahannock's done a really good job in their area of helping coordinate to keep their contractor ahead of us and adding resources so that we can expand and move faster, but we need to move at a pace that they can also handle. So that's where we are in the areas where we have active connections. The next areas that we'll be in, the Buckner Hut, where we've started building fiber. We've also started construction on the hut itself. And by the way, you passed a resolution, I think, for an easement that'll give us a line of sight easement at the Buckner Hut, which we appreciate, so we can have a legal entrance into VDOT right away. We already have some folks up there starting to work on that hut location. We'll have the hut in soon. The first thing that will happen is we'll build the fiber from Mount Hope into Buckner, into that hut. We'll get that lit, and then we'll be able to start splicing out from the hut. So those are some milestones to watch for. Ellisville, and out of there, the Ellisville substation area, we've got 2,600 passings. We've started doing, again, make-ready construction. We're doing aerial make-ready construction, and we're doing underground placement in some of the subdivisions around the lake. That prepares the underground the same way we're preparing the overhead, so we're ready to pull fiber. We can pull fiber overhead and underground when we get there and do the splices. And then in the Dominion area, you can see we have 1,160 passings. A good amount of that, we have started releasing work to the contractors, and you can see the names of the areas that we're in. You saw them on the map. We have not released all of the work in Dominion yet. We anticipate some of that coming later toward the winter of this year. And then the Cuckoo Hut, we have make-ready engineering underway, and after make-ready is finished there, we'll move those crews as they finish up at Ellisville down into Cuckoo. So we're, in August was 1 year into our project from the time we signed a contract with DHCD for the Big Valley grant, and we're in pretty good shape. You can see we'll soon finish up the make-ready engineering for everything we're going to have in the county, and we're already have finished up most of the fiber work other than the splicing and the final connections in that first really large substation, and I think you'll start seeing the pace pick up for connections. So there was a lot of legwork to get ready and to get up to the speed that we're at now. We're building just in the county here about 12 to 15 miles of fiber a week. And that puts us past about 150 homes a week because it's about 10 homes per mile.
Is that big fiber or drops to the house? Is that counting all of it?
This is just the big fiber. This drops.
You put 12 to 15 miles of
Right.
major transmission fiber up.
That's right.
And is that spliced and ready to go? That's about what you turn out a week?
Yes, but it doesn't happen at the same time. So there's one group puts up, and then there's another. The
But when
splicers
you
are
put
doing
it
about
together,
the same
about 12 to 15,
pace.
you're splicing about the same space.
Right.
Good.
All right. We already have about $36 million that's been spent in Louisa to date. This is both CVEC and the areas outside of CVEC. We will end up with a total of almost 17,500 passings and about close to 1,500 miles of fiber total when we're finished. We'll end up with about $83.5 million total in the project costs, and you can see how that splits out between the CVEC area and then the rest of the area. The rise is both the Dominion Middle Mile and Rappahannock areas, what that investment is. So that's some quick numbers, a quick status. if anybody has more specific questions, they can always go to our website. If they go to projects on the bar at the top of the screen, and it'll have a drop-down menu and says search your county. If you type in Louisa, it takes you to a screen where it lists circuit by circuit and uses these little chevron-style arrows to give an update on what stage we're in the project. And it also has information under on when to expect connections. And that's when connections will start. When we start on a circuit, sometimes it can take several months to finish, but we try to show when to expect us to start in each of those circuits. So with that, I'd love you to ask my friend some questions.
Mr. Gentry.
And you hear from me every time. When is the cuckoo area going to turn green?
So,
Do you want it green or you want it blue?
You don't
I
want green.
want it to start first.
well, green, it's got to turn green before it turns blue.
That's
So
right.
it turns green
Had
to
to turn
start
yellow before it
ripening,
turned,
right?
before it turned green.
It
so-
is orange, so that's good. Cuckoo, I would have to look back on the, to see what our projections are now, because if I tell you something and it's different on the website.
Look it
I'm
up
gonna
for you,
get-
Gary.
I'm going to get slapped on the hand. I'm just guessing it's toward the end of next year, because I think Buckner, we're talking about starting to connect people, it's springtime and into the summer. Ellisville will be summer and fall, and Cuckoo's probably going to be,
Well, you've told me before it'd be 2025 before we saw it, so.
so I'm feeling comfortable about getting 2025, and if we rush, we might get you in December of 2024 to get first ones connected. But, so it's coming.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have just two questions here. One, I had a citizen ask me about what the process is. When they are registered for Firefly
Yes.
and the lines are laid and their home is now ready to be hooked up if they want it, is that something that the homeowner has to reach back out, or is that something, since they're registered, Firefly reaches out to them? I got a call from a concerned citizen that said that he had called Firefly, and they said, well, we could have hooked you up in the beginning of the summer. And he was registered. They said, you should have called us. So I was just wondering what that process is.
I would have to check to see what happened. Every once in a while, one will fall through the cracks. But
figured that, yeah.
generally, when they're registered, we work down through those pre-registrations to put the service drops in, and then we contact the homeowner to say, we're ready now to schedule your in-home service.
That's what I thought the process was too. So
Yeah.
he might have missed that contact, or something might have just slipped through the lines there.
Yes, so we
Possibility.
try to be proactive in contacting folks once we have that final service drop in. But good question. If by chance, we always encourage people to call if they're not sure about some of those type things, but it's pretty rare for us. Every once in a while, we'll find one that
Okay.
fell through.
And I have one more question. You mentioned Copper Line. It's not my district, but
Right.
what was the status on? I have a coworker who asks me all the time, and so I was wondering, and she was on Copper Line.
Copper Line, we're about 2/3 of the way through splicing.
Okay.
We haven't started moving the service drop crews in because we're trying to concentrate on getting a few more of the Paynes Mill and Locust Creek
Got it.
areas.
Okay.
But we are adding more service drop crews. I would guess that in Copper Line, we may start making service drops by November, December
Oh,
timeframe.
that's awesome. That'd be
And now,
great.
but it's a large area, so
It
it
is
could
a large
easily run
area. It is.
into spring of next year by the time we finish everyone.
Cool. Thank you.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes, I'm certainly not gonna hold you guys up or make the meeting any longer. I'm a Firefly champion. I love you guys, I love what you do. And I'm sorry about my other board members who don't have blue, as much as blue I got in my district.
I was
take
gonna
my
bring that up.
My heart go out to them. But the Dominion, I do have a little Dominion stretch in my district. Ms. Purcell is one of my constituents who's a Dominion customer. But can Dominion kind of give a sort of update on where you are?
Yeah, so great question. Dominion, we're finishing our final project of our middle mile right now, so not having the exact date, I'm gonna say conservatively by the end of the year, we'll be complete with all of our middle mile work in Louisa County, likely before then, but again, following the lead of Gary, not having the exact date, I'm gonna say by the end of the year, all of our middle mile will be complete.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Purcell.
Hey, Gary. Nice to see you again. Well, blue's great, green, yellow, pink. What about white?
Yeah, what about-
There's a lot of my, there's a lot of,
Your district.
there's a lot of white in my district, and that doesn't have a color.
So, there's a two-step answer to that. The first step is it's not here because it was not qualified to be in the VIDE grant because it was deemed to have broadband service available.
Okay.
So it's not part of this project.
Okay.
That's step one. That's why it's white. The second step is Firefly is still allowed to provide service in those areas. We're concentrating because we have a timeline with the grant funds on this.
Sure.
But we're going to look very closely at where it makes sense for us to have service in those areas. We understood when we first came here, the county wanted every location to have fiber.
Right. No,
Let me
no,
just leave it at that.
Yeah, I know that Comcast around the towns provides service, and so they've got some service. I do think there are a few spots though, so if y'all just keep an open mind on that for the few folks that might not do that, I appreciate it.
I will say, anyone can go on our website and put in their address, and it will show if they're in this footprint. If there is an unserved location that we missed when we drew these maps, let me know that, and we'll make sure that we get
Okay.
to the unserved locations and get a plan for them. But we intend to build everywhere that it's economically feasible. And once we get this other piece done, we'll look closely at that, but we understand your interests. And
Perfect. Thanks, Gary.
all right.
Mr. Barner.
I do want to add to that as well, that Dominion's middle mile is being constructed through there, even though it's not being provided to customers through Firefly right now.
Awesome. Thank y'all.
What stage are you at when you come down the pole and put on the little black boxes?
So when the box actually goes on, that's when the splicer has been there. The first step is they'll leave with just a coil of fiber. When they come by and put the box on, they've cut the fiber and put the splice in, and at that point, the only thing left are the service connections.
So another 2 or 3 days?
Not necessarily. Because on Copperline, again, about 2/3 of that area has those boxes today, but we're not doing any connections yet, final connections yet. So we wait generally until we finish most of a circuit before we start putting service drops or service extensions in. And it depends on the size of the circuit, but we should start putting service drops in again in Copperline and Tip Top. I'm hoping by the November, December, we should start, and it should go into spring probably before we finish.
You've got my area covered pretty well until you get down just below Mount Hope on 522, but that little triangle that's formed in there.
Is that where you live?
Yeah, right. I noticed you stopped right before you got to my house.
The only reason we wouldn't include an area is because they were supposed to have been served. I'll be glad to check that. And when I say been served, that means that they most likely had cable service available. But if it's not available, we'll be glad to make sure we get it included.
I think you coming down, I got one of those boxes at my house and one at the office, so
For sure.
I'm assuming it might not be
That's just
anything in it.
that's just make you feel better.
It is making me feel better.
Well, that does mean that the splicers have gotten that far, and so the next step, when we have contractors to come out to put the service drops in, is they'll start at those boxes and run a small fiber out to the individual homes and businesses, the locations. Yep.
Anybody else have any questions? I have a couple, but I was going to wait till the end. Anybody else have any questions? Couple things, Mr. Wood. So originally, this program is slated to be completed by 2025. Are you still on schedule to do that?
August of 2025. We are striving, and we have not asked for any extensions. We are one of the fastest moving, if not the fastest moving, of these large projects in the state. It's going to be a challenge, but we are working with every intention of having it complete.
Well, that's good to hear. Because, you know, one of the interesting things I see, I do read occasionally social media. I don't respond or post on it very often. But, you know, the more progress you make and the more people see your trucks, and I see your trucks all over the county, just like you said, every different kind of vehicle that you can see. You know, people get excited about it, then they get disappointed that it's not tomorrow. And, you know, it's just interesting to me. 3 years ago in Louisa County, the fiber options were 30 years away. Today, the completion date is what?
2 years.
18 to 24 months away.
Right.
That the entire county will be fibered. I mean, I did write down a note that half the work you're doing right now is in Louisa County.
Yes.
And I'm appreciative of that. You all, I'm on Rappahannock. They sent somebody through there the other day. We're underground. They were laying conduit. And just in my neighborhood, which only has 26 houses, maybe, they were still there. It took them a week. It took a week, and there were two different crews, and they were all up and down that road and across 522. But it just goes to how labor-intensive this process is, because I saw them every day. And that's after they've already replaced poles and done all that. They did that last summer.
Right.
So, again, it's exciting, and I know people get excited, but I also don't want people to lose sight of the big picture that this board and the previous board made a huge investment. The first county to make that investment with you guys, and with Rappahannock and with Dominion, to get it. So, well, I don't have it, and, you know, I'm still brown, and I'm in that. I'm very interested in that Ellisville hut you keep talking about. We're 24 months from a completion date in the entire county, the county being fibered. The other question I wanted to ask you is, I know there was an issue, and I think the General Assembly tried to help you with this, but I think our friends at the railroad company may be appealing this. But we have rail lines all across this county, and there's an issue with those right-of-ways. And I'd like you to explain that, because, you know, I think this board needs to know, the folks that are here need to know, that the railroad companies are being an impediment to getting fiber in rural Virginia.
So the railroad crossings, the main problem with them is that before the legislation, there was no timeline or limit on cost. So it wasn't unusual for some of the railroads to charge us as much as $20,000 to put a fiber up where there were already a wire over the railroad track. And if we raised that and put a fiber up at the same height so they weren't losing anything, it cost them we paid them $20,000.
Nothing.
It cost them nothing.
For us, but it cost them nothing.
So we would pay $20,000, and it could take up to a year for them to process that. Often took up to a year. The fastest one got processed in 3 or 4 months. So the legislation says they need to process within 30 days, and the maximum they can charge is $5,000. They have sued, and I won't talk about, first of all, I'm not a lawyer, so I won't get into the legal arguments. But we do have crossings here. I won't speak for Dominion, but I know that they've had a few crossings they have. We have a crossing still to apply for in one of the areas
Which
in
area?
Louisa that has 2 homes that we'll need to pay. It's a different railroad, so we can probably get off for $15,000 and maybe take 6 or 8 months. And if we weren't providing universal service, those are the type things that
You would.
They would
you
never
just
do it.
wouldn't do it. But we just blend that in with our other costs because we've said we're going to do this for everybody. But from the railroad standpoint, in both cases, this is where there's crossings already in place.
Is there anything this board can do to help bring pressure on CSX and Buckingham Branch? I'll name them for you.
Are they claiming it should be federal, that the General Assembly doesn't have authority? Is that? I don't-
Their argument is it's unconstitutional to limit the amount of money or force them to have a deadline. That they should have, they are effectively a private landowner and can take whatever time they want and charge us whatever they want and decide whether they even want to ever answer us.
Do you provide them with fiber?
We do not. We do not.
Too bad.
They've built-
There would
yeah.
be your leverage.
They've built their own communications. And to show you the extent this can go to, not in this county, but up in Amherst County, we were building underground in a VDOT right-of-way, and VDOT told us you can go this far, but then you've got to get a railroad permit. We said, well, the railroad is 500 feet away. It's a whole forest between us and the railroad. They said, yeah, but they own this. You look back, and there had been a depot there in the 1860s, and they owned that the right-of-way through there. We had to get a permit and get 2 railroad flaggers to stand on the road and flag any trains that would come
On the road.
on the road, along with VDOT.
Trains that come on the road.
Because they had to flag anything in the right-of-way. So we paid,
makes sense.
we paid $1,500 for just those flaggers to show up for us to go 200 feet along the VDOT right-of-way. So it can be a little ridiculous. That hasn't held the railroads up from doing what they see. There are abandoned railroads down south side Virginia where they haven't been able to cross for a year that you can't even see other than the little indentation where there used to be tracks, but they still own the right-of-way. And they haven't processed the crossing. So that's enough about my friends at the railroad.
Well, we heard from Ms. Marshall. I don't know, Mr. Marshall, if you have anything else. And Mark, I don't know if you have anything else on behalf of Rappahannock.
Like Gary said, we're moving along really well. Just to give you some ideas, some numbers, we've, in the make-ready construction for the overhead part, we've done over 400 miles already of make-ready construction, getting the lines prepared. That's what enables Firefly and their crews to be able to get in, get that fiber overhead done and the underground portions done. So we're making really good progress, moving at very good pace. We've had as many as 12 to 15 crews working at a time in the county to be able to make that happen. It takes a lot of work, a lot of materials, and a lot of people to make that happen. So we've been very fortunate that we were able to get qualified crews, our construction crews that we've had, some others that we've brought on, because not just anyone can go up and work in the power space on the poles. Not just anyone can change out a pole. So you have to have qualified linemen, crews that are very qualified and have had lots of experience to be able to do that, and the proper trucks and equipment. So those are getting, those are difficult to find, and as more grant money comes about, it'll get a little more hard to find, because crews, just like all of us, we like a dollar. So sometimes they will move about for where they can make more money. I think we're very fortunate with the crews we've got. We've had them for a long time. They've done construction for us for a long time. So I don't see them, running off to another area. So I think we're in really good shape. And like you see on the map, we've got a lot of work done, still a lot to do, but we've done, over 400 or about 400 miles of make-ready construction in about a year. Maybe a little longer than that, but we're doing good and keeping well ahead of the fiber crews so that they can get the construction done, and we're not holding up that process.
Well, and to your point, I have noticed, and I've heard some local businesses talk about, especially local restaurants, at lunchtime, at breakfast time, when you'll see those crews tend to gather at the same place and go in, summer's going, so the tourist season here has died way down, but you'll see 30 contractors go in and have lunch or breakfast at a restaurant. I mean, the money that even this make-ready work and this construction work is pumping into our local economy, we'd be remiss if we didn't say something about that, so.
Well, they're doing a great job, and we're very glad to have all of them.
Anyone else?
Let me just real quickly, if I can, close by saying we have had great partnerships here. Dominion had Louisa as one of the first counties that they applied for the middle mile in our territory, and have done a great job staying on track with that. And Mark and his team at Rappahannock, Lindsey Watson is here, and the whole team they have back have really increased the pace of their work, because they saw that we needed to do that in order to hit our schedule. And they've just been great partners to work with, and we wouldn't be here without them. The last thing I want to do is thank all of the Louisa residents, because all those trucks go off the road at some point and through somebody's field. And so we appreciate the patience. We're working really hard to make sure we don't damage anything, but we're around a lot of backyards and fields and backwoods. Thank you for your patience with that. And thank you for not shooting the fiber when you're dove hunting.
You're only supposed to shoot the ones that are flying, not the ones that are sitting on the wire. Thank you all very much.
Don't give any
Thank you.
ideas.
It's an exciting update.